Hello everybody and welcome back to RP-1. We're going to focus today on a couple different X-plane flights, and then at the end of the episode we're going to do a heavy satellites program mission as well. So hope you're excited. We've got a lot going on in this episode and the next one. We have to cancel that contract just because it's a little too advanced for what we have now. So we're going to open ourselves up instead to the Mach 2 supersonic. We're going to pick up the stratospheric research as well, but we're not going to be able to achieve that just yet. But we are going to focus on the Mach 2 supersonic today, and hopefully everything goes well, and we can land a little bit better than we had in the previous episodes. So let's go ahead and load up the RP-1 from the previous episode. And we're going to make some minor adjustments. We now actually have access to much better engines, the second best quality actually, so we're going to go ahead and use those and see if we can't utilize the same design to push us forward in our contracts, as opposed to redesigning a plane altogether, which is much more expensive. So let's go ahead and remove the tanks just to make sure we have the right fuel in store. And then we're going to do a simulation and then come on back, and we're going to make a minor adjustment, and then it's just to get these wheels unclipped from the wing a little bit more. Didn't like how it looked. Alright, so now we just gotta change our parachutes. We're going to put them onto two separate stages. That way we can utilize the first stage as more of a landing chute if we need to slow ourselves down, like a drogue chute on the runway. And then the second one will act as our emergency stabilizer chute, so if we do have to do a water landing, we can then just activate both stages and then be perfectly balanced. But as we can see here, we are now coloring the wings and the control surfaces of the plane, which means that I am happy with the design, and we're going to be putting this out into the build queue soon enough. I did figure out how to recolor the cockpit, so I'm very excited about that. Before I thought you only had the two options of gray or white, so it's cool to see that I can now bring it into line with the color scheme of the rest of it. So one more simulation, and then I think this is good. We're going to go ahead and name this the XP2 because it's got an upgraded engine, and so we need to differentiate it from the first one. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure we saved over the first one by this point anyways, so naming it is kind of irrelevant at this point. Not irrelevant, but just a little after the fact. Well, too little too late. But anyways, we're going to throw a little extra decaling on here just because I thought it'd be kind of fun to have this merged in with the XP2 decal. So, nothing big. But anyways, we are ready. We need to modify our hangar in order to accommodate this plane. So we're going to hit modify. And then when we come back to get the X-plane into the hangar, we had to unlock the new engine. So that is good. That's going to be in the production. And once we get Heidi Weber trained up in the mission, we can get going. I wanted to include this real fast. This is a simulated flight. This is what kind of where we're at. The last simulation before we started to fly. This is the landing, if you will call it that we decided to say, you know what, that's good enough. We'll go ahead and put that through. Heidi is less than pleased until she starts coming to a slow stop, but yeah, once again crashing all my X-planes, but I just wanted to include that because it was kind of funny, and just to see the fact that we actually survived that. It's crazy. But anyways, we are getting ready to air launch. I decided that 141 was the perfect distance to go, which is nice because that is my lucky number. hence the 141 in my channel name. But anyways, it is time to go. The maiden flight of the XP-2, Heidi Weber in the cockpit. It's pretty good. She's got quite a bit of experience now. So the engines kick on with no problem, and though it only looks like one of the 4 engines on each side are lit, and I mean that is true, it will come on eventually once they reach full power. I'm gonna keep the data up for a little while until I recognize that, but just to let you know that if you run into this, if you're playing and the XLR11 does this where it only shows one, give it some time. It may not be an error, it may just be the fact that they're not fully spooled up yet. There we go. So the contract for today is to reach 12.5 kilometers of altitude, and at some point between the 10 kilometer range and the 12.5 we need to reach 320 meters per second, which we just did. So now all we got to do is bring our apoapsis up until it crosses the 2.5 and then go. We don't want to go too high. This cockpit is only rated for 16 kilometers altitude, and anything above that could kill Heidi, so we don't want to go too high. Like, already our apoapsis is at 16.5, so we're gonna need to keep an eye on that. I got too distracted with the mission log, and it's important not to. But we successfully completed the contract, so now all we need to do is land successfully, safely, and bring Heidi home. We're starting to go pretty fast, 680 meters per second and climbing. So it's a little dangerous. We've got 30 seconds of fuel remaining. Because of the new engine, we were able to utilize more fuel. Starting to come down in speed, and our engines kick off, so we know that we are going to be gliding down. Now we've got 65 kilometers to go until the runway, so hopefully we don't overshoot it because we're going too fast, or undershoot it and land in the water because we didn't plan our initial air launch well enough. But I'm pretty confident in the 141 kilometers that we started with, so I think we'll be alright. Beautiful day for an air launch. Love the volumetric clouds as we come on in. Enough visibility that we can spot our landing target in a good enough time. Won't be as lucky on later flights. I'm not entirely sure why the XLR11s look like they're still firing, but I'm pretty sure we're not getting any thrust from there. Yep, 0 kilonewtons of thrust. We're only going 222 meters per second right now, and that's dropping as well, so we gotta be careful. We're gonna probably end up coming in a little short. We could have utilized some of our altitude a little bit better and not drop down as quickly, but nonetheless, we are coming on in for a landing. We're kind of lined up pretty well. Not perfect, but decent enough that I feel confident in bringing her in on a landing on the first pass. Not that I really have much of a choice to control for a second pass. Once again, we need to remember that the ground that we see is not the ground that we will eventually land on, and as we sink below the surface, we realize we are going to be coming up short on that runway, and the hill that we're going to hit is fairly aggressive. As much as I tried to brake, all it did was flip me over. Heidi looks a little uncomfortable, but as she comes to a stop and we realize that she is still alive and the cockpit is intact, meaning that we have successfully completed this contract. And in fact, we even did the reputation grab and landed. Apparently that took it as landing on the runway, so it's good to go. Let's go ahead and recover the vessel and the pilot, and then we will move on to the next flight of the episode. There we go. That added 10 days onto her retirement date. Let's go ahead and recover this debris. We're going to go check out the next set of contracts that we've got. We've got quite a few contracts in the X-Plane program, so we're going to want to make sure that we do these every single time until we can complete the contract, the program itself. But I also want to make sure that we spend some time on the heavy satellites. It's not just nothing but X-Planes. But anyways, we are now capable of reaching higher heights, but we still can't go above the 16-kilometer limit because that is just what our cockpit is rated for. But nonetheless, I'm going to accept this contract anyways, and we are going to hopefully unlock a new cockpit soon enough. But we'll get more into that later. For now, let's just go ahead and edit the plane. And unfortunately, there's not a lot left to it. This is the one that we recovered from the runway that we just did. And we can rebuild it. We can put all the pieces back together. But honestly, it's just worth it for my time and energy to not have to try to realign everything. And we'll just put in a new XP2 into the production line, so we'll be flying that one instead. So now it's time. We need to hire a bunch of people. We want to make sure that our heavy satellites program can come quickly enough. We don't waste too much time, so we're going to hire more people to the launch pad. We have a max of 574, but we can't afford to have that many people working right now, so we're just going to put the 200 some odd that we did in there. Let's go ahead and get Heidi trained up for the next mission. We are going to rename that old plane, the one that we just decided not to fix, and we're going to name that as the first relic. I decided we're going to save the planes if they get broken on a mission, but the mission is successful. If there's any kind of history to our X-Plane program, we're going to keep it here, so we'll have the first relic XP2 in storage. We can revisit, look back on that history if we want to. Alright, so now the XP2 is ready to go. It's mounted to the plane. All we need to do is get a pilot aboard and do the next mission. So once again, we get Heidi Weber in the cockpit. And then we got a few seconds to get ourselves ready before we are air launched. And there we go. Both engines kick on successfully. Once again, only one engine visibly lit, but that's not to worry. There we go. So we should be at full throttle now. And our speed is rising. So we're going to bring up our Delta V stats and our apoapsis stats. And we are doing the optional version of that same flight. We already completed the required one, but it's going to be a second before we can complete the second required one. We're going to need access to better technology, both in the X-plane and the jet plane version. So we're going to use this time that we have in between flights, in between rocket launches, and we're going to do optional contracts if we have the ability to. The heavy satellites launch that we're doing at the end of this episode is actually an optional contract as well. But that will give us reputation, and we will be able to use that later. But as we see here, we now reach the 12.5 kilometer altitude that we needed, so all we have to do is land safely once again. Heidi, I have full faith in you. You've proven time and time again that you can handle a hairy landing, so we'll see how you do. And our runway now in sight. We start to descend. Our engines cut out. And we glide forward. We are fairly high, so if we dip down too suddenly, or if we wait too long, we will be coming in at a pretty poor angle. So right now it's all about finding the balance between the angle of approach. But once again, a perfect day for flying. Partly cloudy, just enough to appreciate the weather, but not enough that it interferes with landing. Alright, we're not lined up exactly right, but we are coming down at a better angle. We're more likely to actually reach the runway this time instead of coming up short. So, pretty excited. Heidi's pretty excited. Let's see if we can do it. Everyone holds their breath. Gears are deployed. Coming in a little hot. 238 meters is kind of fast. Not good. We dipped down a little lower than I would have wanted. But now we're a little higher than I would have wanted as well. Try to line ourselves up with the runway, but we still haven't touched down and we're halfway gone as well. Hit the parachutes as best I can. Forget to brake. For some reason I don't think about braking. But nonetheless, the drogue chutes were all that was necessary to come to a complete stop. And Heidi Weber can land, or can mark down that she has a successful landing. At least one. So let's go ahead and recover the plane and get back to the KSC. We've got another flight to go before our rocket launch. But I think Heidi's up for it. Still not a one-star pilot, unfortunately. We'll have to do something about that. I do like the fact that we're doing the X-plane contracts here because of the fact that we're doing a heavy contract. Because we're doing a heavy satellite program, that means that we should be better suited for crewed flights and crewed orbits and crewed missions to the moon, not the moon. Crewed missions to the moon. But here we are. We've got our X-plane mounting to the carrier. We've got our rocket rolling out to the launch pad. It's only 1958, which is not great. I'm not doing too well as far as keeping true to the historical space race, but I'm only trying to do a little bit better than I did before, not necessarily do better than history. I'm not that good yet, but I'm getting there, and I'm hopefully you've been enjoying the process as well, and maybe one of these days will be good enough. But anyways, here is the titular flight of the Funky Chicken. And it's called that because we ended up having a few problems with it. One of the notably being that our landing gear, the back two legs, were stuck in the downwards position. So we'll have to be doing this whole flight with our two funky little feet hanging out. We also had a failure to ignite on one of our engines, the whole engines, and this is no bug. So we are slightly lopsided, but so this contract is probably going to be a wash, but nonetheless, Heidi is out here, the plane is out here, the stakes are real, and she has to make it as far as she can make it, trying to get home on a busted engine and some broken legs. But she's a professional, so she's still going to attempt the mission and see if she can't come home with some glory. Our apoapsis is climbing slowly and kind of capping off. We're barely pushing past where we're going to go, and our speed is dropping. So we are unfortunately not going to make the mission, but also unfortunately the mission that we have on our docket is a 20-kilometer crewed vessel, and once again our cockpit only can reach 16 kilometers, so this flight was kind of a bust before it even began. But nonetheless, we're here. We're gonna do the best we can. I changed the controls on the flaps just to see if I can get a little bit more pitch control to head up, but alas, I cannot, and the off balancedness of the engines start to catch up with us, so we go ahead and kill them. Or maybe we ran out of fuel, I can't remember, but nonetheless our engines are off and we're starting to bank pretty hard. Heidi Weber once again, absolutely excited, just ecstatic to be in the air once again. Going 305 meters per second, not exactly the safest, so we are going to have to make sure to keep our wits about us as we come in for a landing, but at least it'll be a water landing, and we won't lose any reputation as long as we don't kill our pilot. So this plane, from this flight on, has officially been named the Funky Chicken. It too will be going into our history, our Hall of Fame, as a historical flight. It's okay, Heidi. It's okay. We're good. But yeah, this will go into our Museum of Historical Planes as the Funky Chicken, and pretty happy about that. But in the next episode, we will be redesigning, and we'll be doing a few more. We're going to be doing more jet stuff soon, because we also have to focus on jet plane missions, as well as X-plane missions. So, looking forward to that as well. So let's go ahead and recover this. Give Heidi a break, And for the last bit of the episode, we are going to focus on our heavy satellites program. 6 extra days added to Heidi's retirement date, so pretty happy about that. But anyways, lastly, here we are with the Dr. 6000. The mission is simply the optional downrange. I believe it's 7,000 it wants us to do now, with significantly more sounding payload. So as you can see, the little orange part's a little wider. Or not wider, taller, excuse me. But since this launch vehicle has the ability of going orbital, going 7,500 kilometers downrange is not going to be a problem. It's 1,000 units of sounding payload. That's what we have. But this too is an optional contract. Once again, this is more the fact that in order to complete the next contracts, the next required contracts for both the X-plane and the heavy satellites program, I'm going to need a little bit better technology, I think. I think I'm going to need more science. I'm going to need better quality engines, better quality, just materials in general, avionics, just heat shields. We're going to need to start getting more at this point and getting pretty aggressive with our science. So I can't wait. I can just utilize the money that we have, get more scientists, push through, unlock those parts, and then attempt those missions. And I mean, I am going to be doing that, but I might as well launch some optional contracts while we're waiting for that to go. It is, using money that we could be hoarding and spending on larger projects, but it's also picking up some residual science. Like, I've got the mass spectrometer on here, and that's going to be running once we get up into space. And yeah, extra reputation. It'll allow us to take better quality programs later for more money. That'll be good. And yeah, I'm excited to be utilizing my time a little bit better. So optional contracts are the way to go. So now we jettisoned our side boosters. Everything went without a hitch, no damage to our center rocket. So let's go ahead and start pitching down again. Our apoapsis is already over the 140 kilometer required. So typically, literally all we need to do now is push ourselves forward and make sure that we can cover the distance. But I am going to let my apoapsis climb a bit higher. Between 200 and 300 kilometers will give us a lot of in-space time to do our next stage, and that'll be crucial for not just going orbital, but just going the 7,500 downrange. So we're easing our way towards a 0-degree horizontal. We now are past the 140 kilometer minimum for the contract, so all that is left to do is go downrange. Got a minute and 11 seconds left of fuel remaining, so pretty excited with the design. Building big has always been my go-to for rockets. I end up over-engineering typically in all the Kerbal series that I do. I end up just eyeballing it more and just packing on more than I need. And when it comes to the heavy satellite program, that is the right mentality to have. So our apoapsis is slowly creeping up to 300. We've got 30 seconds of burn left. I point myself directly horizontal, and I'm going to go ahead and start my roll. We got 2 minutes and 3 seconds of burn, and we got to keep an eye on our time to apoapsis and split that time in half so we can utilize our apoapsis as best as possible. But we're just going to keep spinning and wait until our engine cuts out right there, and then we're going to separate and coast for a little bit until we get a little bit closer to our ideal burn time. As you can see here in our avionics, we have both the pressure scan and the spectrometry experiments running, and that should give us a decent amount. And we've launched this before, so as long as we don't have any failures to ignite or ullage issues, then we should be set up for another successful flight. So we have 4.2 science starting off with, probably a little bit less, but it took me a while to take a look at that. But by the end of this flight, we should have a considerable amount more. And we're getting into the place where science is going to be needed to spend, is going to need to be spent fairly wisely. In stock KSP, it's not as much of a big deal, but in RSS, RO, and RP-1, you can easily lock yourself out into a state where you can't progress because you just don't have the science to get more science, and we don't want to have that happen. So we got 30 seconds until our burn. Just keeping an eye on everything. I don't want to time warp too quickly, or at all for that matter, because I don't want to go past our node. I'm looking at the time to apoapsis as 1 minute and 11 seconds, right below the orbital period, and that will tell me the correct time to burn, and that is now. So we hit both our stages in rapid succession, and what that does is that puts us at an even faster spin, and it pushed our craft forward, so the ullage had no problem to ignite the AJ-10. It did give us a little bit of a wobble, which isn't ideal, but for a contract like this, it's not going to be a problem. If we were needing to do something with a lot more precision, that wouldn't be it wouldn't be ideal, but for something like this, all we need to do is keep pushing forward, and that little bit of a wobble is not enough to ruin our trajectory or our progress. So we've got 1 minute and 16 seconds left of burn time, and we've already reached 1,300 kilometers downrange. We still have, we're still pushing our apoapsis forward, so that means that we are going to, it's going to be a long time before we reach our halfway point. Ideally, with a downrange contract, you want to reach 2/3 of your goal, your downrange goal, by the time you reach your apoapsis. This isn't, a hard set rule. This has just kind of been from my experience. I've noticed that if you're at that 2/3 mark at your apoapsis, you shouldn't have any problem covering it. But yeah, as you see here, that wobble that started off simply eventually ended up pretty extreme. Again, it doesn't matter because we're not trying to recover the vessel. We're not trying to get into a particular orbit. However, we did just get it into an almost orbit. Our periapsis is 108 kilometers, which means that we will be coming back down to the surface at some point. But for now, all we need to do is time warp our way forward, and considering that we'll come on the other end of the Earth, we can safely assume that we're going to complete this contract successfully. In the next episodes to come, I've already recorded a couple of them, but what I can say is we are going to push forward on more of the Heavy Satellites program. We are going to be doing a lot more X-Plane as well, but I want to make sure that we don't neglect our rocketry as well. I don't know about you, but I find the rocketry the most interesting part of RP-1. X-Planes are fun, but it's all about the space program. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more RP-1. If you did, consider subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take care.